I think you're all set. We are live.
We
Good
got
evening.
Got it.
Yep, we got it. Good evening and welcome. This is a regularly scheduled workshop for the Bangor City Council. Today is Monday, December 11th, and it is 6:16 p.m. I got a little bit of a late start tonight. Around the table, we have Councilor Leonard, Councilor Schaefer, Councilor Dean, Councilor Trumbull, Councilor Fournier.
You might want to mute or use headphones, Kara. Mute your mic unless you're talking because it echoes back. Or can we mute her?
I don't
We
know
can
if
mute her.
Yeah. There we go.
There we go. We'll see if that's better. I'm Council Chair Pelletier. And we also have our city solicitor, Dave Sevchek, at the table with us. And you are first on the agenda, sir.
Yeah, so this is the new city solicitor update. We've never done this before, but we're going to do it regularly. It's supposed to be quarterly. I'm going to probably do it a little bit more often than that. And the first thing I wanted to update you on is the happiest thing, and that this is Grace Ennis. She's a new assistant city solicitor, and she's this is your how many weeks?
Third week.
Third week. Yeah, third week. And she grew up in the Austin, Texas area. She attended Texas Women's University, graduated summa cum laude, and went to Penn State Law School, graduated in May, recently got her passed the bar. And while she was at law school, she was involved working at the Entrepreneur Assistance Clinic in their small business development. So I think that that's probably a pretty good place to start at, and things are going very well. And we're just really happy to be fully staffed in the legal department for the first time in a while. We interviewed a number of people before we made the offer to Grace, and so Mary Flynn and I and Grace we're just very happy to be fully staffed, and so just wanted to introduce all of you to her. And then I just wanted to update you on some of the things that I do. This is going to be a little bit more informational than I hope the ones in the future are, just because I've never done this before. I haven't really reported what I do to people in a very long time, more than a quarter of a century, as a matter of fact. But so I just wanted to let you know that the legal department is coordinating efforts with the code enforcement and the community and economic development department on the vacant properties issue, and with the goal of trying to reduce the number of vacant properties in Bangor. And we're trying to gain momentum toward that goal. As you recall, last year, the legal department helped to revise the vacant property registration ordinance, I should say, to increase the registration fees and make the ordinance's enforcement provisions more effective. And after the ordinance was revised, notices were sent to vacant property owners by code enforcement to alert them to the change in the registration fee requirements. There were a couple of different forms of letters that went out. Now the team from code enforcement, CNED, and the legal department are meeting regularly to work collectively on I think the first thing we're working on is getting updated, accurate contacts and owner information, because a lot of times with these vacant properties, that's one of the big problems, is that they're owned by banks at some point that then get just transferred to another entity, and we don't have we can send the notices, but if there's nobody on the other end to actually receive the notice that's accurate, then they're not going to be as effective. So we're trying to update that right now. We're also currently developing protocols for different classifications of vacant properties. For example, sending friendly notices offering assistance to those who are in current compliance with the registration ordinance, and sending stronger notices to those who may be behind in being in compliance, or getting down to notices of violations for those who are in violation of the registration ordinance. And those notice of violation will be practically effective if there is someone on the other end to respond to them. And even if there isn't, the city still needs accurate ownership and contact information in order to find someone to serve an appropriate civil complaint if it gets to that point where we need to enforce it in court. Ultimately, we're going to likely require the services of outside counsel in order to more quickly and effectively enforce the ordinance. The legal department, though, will certainly coordinate those efforts, and it's not determined at this point whether we will go in ourselves on some of them or whether they'll be referred out, but certainly some of them will. So the legal department also regularly provides legal support and guidance for the planning board, including attending regular and special meetings of the planning board for guidance on things such as process and interpretation of laws, such as the land development code and the provisions in it and state laws. When the board sits, it has a number of different functions. One of them being a reviewing decision maker on conditional use permits, land development permits, and subdivisions and such. You probably have heard of, right now there's a project off Lancaster Street that had been approved for subdivision, land development, conditional use permit, but that approval was appealed to the Superior Court. The Superior Court vacated the permit and remanded it back to the planning board, and now that project is going through the process again, and we are in the middle of that right now. So we have a lot of guidance to give and to share through that process right now. The legal department is also the staff liaison to the Board of Appeals. And so and they meet to hear appeals of code enforcement officer code enforcement officer orders. They hear appeals from taxi cab license denials, requests for variance from an ordinance provision or a code enforcement officer's interpretation of an ordinance provision. For example, there have been a number of requests for reasonable accommodation under the Federal Fair Housing Act in the last couple of the years since I've been here. There have been a number of those. And so the legal department fields the appeal after the code enforcement office receives it and receives the appeal fee. And the legal department, inquires regarding availability for the council chambers and for the board members to try to get a quorum for the appeals, and we schedule follow-up meetings to review and sign the written notice of decision, which the legal department drafts. The legal department also takes care of the minutes for the meetings. The legal department also, they notice up the matter, including the notices that need to go to abutters or property owners within 100 feet of the site at times, sends the notices to publication in the Bangor Daily News, and communicates with the applicant regarding scheduling and trying to be helpful. The solicitor or the assistant solicitor will attend. One of us will be at all of the meetings of the Board of Appeals to guide the board with regard to process and the law. And we will also draft the notices of decisions that are signed by the Board of Appeals. There are currently 2 matters pending in front of the Board of Appeals. One is involved a non-conforming sign issue, and the other one involves a party wall issue downtown. And then there are a myriad of legal issues brought to the legal department from pretty much every department in the city. And so we are often drafting and reviewing proposed policies or ordinances, or reviewing or drafting contracts, amendments to contracts, leases, amending leases, and that sort of thing. The airport and the Community Economic Development Department request assistance regularly from the legal department on issues involving various parcels of land the city acquired. The airport, they acquired the land historically that is now Bangor International Airport and the surrounding area. The legal status of the land that is currently Bangor International Airport is a function of the historical evolution of the area, and the legal status of each parcel depends on when the property was acquired and from what source. So the legal department is regularly sought for assistance for issues dealing with Ban Air Corp, which the nonprofit corporation that fosters, encourages, and assists the physical location, settlement, and expansion of industrial, manufacturing, and business enterprises and recreational projects on or near BIA. Often the legal department's involvement has to do with a proposed lease or a lease amendment in that regard. We're always working on a number of contracts, Freedom of Access Act requests and issues, quitclaim deeds for transfer of property back to landowners who have paid their taxes, sewer, and or stormwater debts. The solicitor also regularly reviews and signs each of the proposed council orders, council resolves, and council ordinances that come before the council. Many times where other departments have drafted them, but the legal department also drafts some of those. But anyway, the solicitor, or in my absence, the assistant solicitor, signs each one of those proposed ones before it comes to you. We'll be, as an example, I'll be bringing back to the Government Operations Committee, probably at the next meeting, the issue of the city revising its retail marijuana ordinance to deal with sale of cannabis at offsite events in light of the state's passage of LD 202. It had been in front of the GovOps committee, and there's a proposed ordinance dealing with it. It did not pass, so we're going to come back to the GovOps committee for guidance on that and then draft a new one, hopefully, because that's going to be my recommendation, that we draft something to deal with it one way or the other. Regarding legal issues, including at times going into court for enforcement or supporting outside counsel in terms of gathering evidence and such, who are in court to prosecute land use violations and other enforcement matters. We coordinate with the risk management and with outside counsel to assist with court cases in which the city is a named party. And now lately we are all now looking at the issue of a civility clause that we've been given, currently looking at what other municipalities have for civility clauses to help in coming up with recommended language to incorporate into either a city policy or part of the code of ordinances. We're also currently reviewing what is the appropriate scope of the applicability, the best form, best location for such a provision, whether it belongs in the city council section of the code of ordinances, the code of ethics, or in a separate policy. We're working on those issues right now. And the last thing is we'll be relocating to the new Penquist building probably tomorrow afternoon or Wednesday. So if you're looking for us, we're going to be on the move shortly. And with that, if you have any questions about the update, or if you would prefer a different type of update, like I said, this one was more informational. I don't think it'll be so much in 2 months from now when I come with another update, but I'd be glad to accommodate whatever form you all would like.
I have one question. Thank you. You were speaking about the vacant dwellings in Bangor.
Yes,
Is there not some kind of database that would let you know who has the mortgage?
there are lists, but there are more than one list, and we're trying to make them more accurate
Mhm.
and sort of put all the information into.
So it could be on a
We're trying to
list, but it
consolidate.
might have been sold to another bank,
Yes,
and so you just have to go through the whole
and
process.
if the list hasn't been updated lately, that owner information and contact information, in fact, we've already discovered that a lot of them are not accurate anymore.
Mhm.
So you
So
need
there
to
isn't
get
one
for
list that
notices,
every
not only
bank
for
has.
notices, but also to acquire jurisdiction of the court if it goes to that. And you need to serve somebody with
Mhm.
someone's complaint in order to acquire jurisdiction in court.
Councilor Leonard?
So, thank you for the update, and I don't have really much to add on the update itself. It will change, as you said, throughout the course of time, especially when it's less informationally driven. I do have two questions. So one is the relationship that you're going to have with business economic development, code enforcement, in regarding those vacant properties. Will that language that you share between them also be transferable with a potentially future rental registry as well?
Well, yeah, it's kind of a team effort with regard to the vacant properties right now, but we daily deal with C&ED. They're right next to us. And I don't know what it'll be like once, the place is renovated, but we see them on a daily basis, and code enforcement. So I would say yes. I mean, if that's the direction that we go in, there could be coordination in that regard.
Okay. And the other thing I had, which was not really a question, it's just sort of like a statement regarding the civility clause. I would really love that to go forward to the ethics committee before council even touches that. I think that would be very appropriate, especially since civility as a topic goes hand in hand with ethics. So I think before that even comes back to us, I would really like the ethics committee to take a look at that.
Other questions or comments? Councilor Schaefer.
So first of all, welcome to Grace. All my family was in Austin until they moved to Colorado. So we're in Austin. What area of Austin?
So I was in like North Austin for a while, and then we moved to a small town like about an hour north of Austin called Georgetown. I just say I'm from the Austin area.
I know, everyone's from the Austin. Mine were like
Yeah.
Spicewood, Leander.
Okay.
The ones who are left are in oh gosh, it's like a something ranch or something. But but I used to, and my grandparents lived in Marble Falls, so I used to go there all the time as a kid. So I always have to ask. But welcome. Is this your and also just are you new to Bangor altogether, or?
My parents lived here. They just moved here like a year ago.
Oh, nice.
And so that was why I applied for this job. And they absolutely love it here. My mom texted me when I was interviewing, and she was like, this is the only place I've ever lived that I immediately loved. So that was like a big draw for me.
This is so small town, it makes you wonder if it's the people that Claire met
Oh,
at
maybe.
the barbecue place that was from
Right.
Texas or whatever. Anyway. Do you remember that? Anyway.
I do remember that conversation. That's funny.
But yeah, no, I just was really interested in staying up north after going to Penn State. And so that's how I ended up here.
I always like to find out, so thank you for that. My question for the rental and the vacancies, we enacted that ordinance that the vacancy rates were going to go up. Have we collected anything on that, or is it just a matter of still trying to find out how to send the bill?
So we have been successful in getting a number of them to register. And I think what we're doing is we've sent the first letter, come on, be nice, to what the address we have on file, because,
Right.
so here's where Debbie and Dave sometimes part, is Dave's like, well, we need the legal address. And I said, they're getting the tax bill, send the letter.
Yeah.
And then if we have to kick it up a notch, then we have to go through the registry to figure out, does that bank still own it? Can we get to the right person? Have they sold it off as part of their investment portfolio? And it's a bit of a sleuthing trick. So yes, we have gotten a number of them to register, but remember, it's not gonna escalate.
Right.
It's gonna be a year before it escalates
Right.
and it starts getting painful.
Was the movement on this list, do you think any of the movement on this list was brought about by the ordinance time, or is it just sort of the two separate things?
I think it's two separate things for us personally. I think it's the continuation of the real estate boom.
Mhm.
I think people are going by why they never would buy the house on Allen Street is beyond me, because it's cute as all get out, I
Yeah.
think, from the outsides. But what it is people who have been hanging on or perhaps
Mhm.
waiting are now going, okay, well, now it makes financial sense and I'm gonna go ahead and I will tell you that some of those vacant properties that are now in compliance came up because we looked at the top 10 that we were gonna identify and go after. And that's how we got some of them to come in. We actually got the heirs to come in. It was a property that was concerning to neighbors. It wasn't getting maintained. We got him in and he's like, I got it maintained and paid the taxes. And I said, you're not in compliance with code. You haven't registered it. And we refused to do anything with them until we did that.
Good.
But we've got name, phone number, registered. Perfect.
Awesome, thank you.
Step ahead.
Counselor Fish? Oh, sorry. Are you done, Counselor?
I'm all set.
Okay.
Is it also, more difficult to get clear title on some of these properties where you can't work with the sellers or the mortgage companies to legally go through the process of signing off their interest. And if you have to move independently, I know through real estate, sometimes if it's a tax acquired property, there's something like 10 years or something. I know a lot of underwriters will not provide title insurance. So doesn't that delay the process substantially before you can actually take the ownership and work with a developer, do renovations, or even take ownership as a city?
The goal is to get the properties not vacant. So it does not always involve taking the property. If the property is acquired by failure to pay taxes, then you have that process to go through. But there can be a number of ways. I shouldn't look over there. There could be a number of ways to get the property to house people again. And they don't all involve the city taking ownership and possession.
But it has slowed us up in the past, Councilor Fish. And what we ended up doing typically was working with developers who had the ability and the know-how to clear the title, because you're right. It does create a cloud on the title that you have to clear judiciously. But we've also had developers who, have the equity and are able to do that and convert it and sit on the property for that 10-year period and wait for it to clear. So it's gone both ways.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I want to extend a warm welcome. What are you most excited to learn?
I didn't learn anything about municipal law in law school, which I know that sounds scary because I'm now working here, but honestly, like, I really love the research and digging into things, and Dave has been so good about teaching me everything, and so I'm just really excited to learn about city government and especially here.
And I want to mention that the reason why the legal department is so happy about Grace being hired, because I think after all our interviews, I think we got the right person. So looking forward to working together, the full department.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a legislative update.
Yes, so in your packet is a slim 31 pages. It's almost hard to tell that it is the second regular session. Obviously the state works on a biennial cycle. So last year was the first regular session. So there were, I think, 3,000 or 4,000 bills that got presented in various stages of review and passage and adoption. And then there are a number of bills that are carried over or carried forward. So what you have in your packet is a list of all of the bills that were carried forward by the prior session into the upcoming session. The ones that were carried over from either the House or the Senate floor. And then there is a process by which legislators can include new items for consideration, and it goes through a whole process as to what will be accepted and what won't be. So I believe I got them all in there with the help of MMA. Thankfully had some documents that they were able to send me quick links to. And especially for, so just to be thoughtful, the new session is slated to begin January 3rd. They have continued to do a number of joint committee hearings and some committee work and some study type work, even since their adjournment, but they're going to start in full force January 3rd. At this point, the statutory adjournment is set for April 17th, 2024. Typically, I don't believe the second session usually goes beyond that, but one never knows any given year. So, we often talk about LDs. These are legislative documents, and that is how the documents are defined and coming forward. The items that came forward, yes, there are a number of LDs that are also on the appropriation table. So if funding becomes available, the only way they would then move to the House and Senate floor if it came out of appropriations. So what I did was just try to provide a quick summary by major category or heading, if you will, that in going through the 30 pages appeared to be of the most municipal interest, and I broke them up by infrastructure, code enforcement, zoning, public safety, human resources, municipal solid waste and recycling, PFAS, climate change, public health, general assistance, emergency shelters, housing, taxation, and some other items. I also noted the ones that the city had previously submitted legislation on, and I included copies of that legislation as well. So I didn't know kind of how you wanted to proceed from here, or if there's some additional items you wanted to chat about.
Sure, Counselor Leonard.
So, thank you for putting this list together. I appreciate that. I think it would be inappropriate for Bangor to go further along without having a legislative committee that counselors are part of. Portland does something similar where they bring together their legislators, their senators, and the surrounding people of Oxford County and the other surrounding counties to talk about what are some of the legislative needs that they can coordinate on in order to bring funds to their city. For example, 88% of all of GA funds basically go to one municipality, and that's Portland. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they are just a big city. Granted, they're going to get a lot more funds than others, but they're also very organized politically. And I think if we are going to do the best job possible of making sure that Penobscot County and Bangor are best represented at the legislative level, we need to be able to form a committee that brings our legislative allies, not only in Bangor, but also through other pockets of Penobscot County and potentially the county commissioners to the same table so that we can regionally coordinate on what type of bills are good for Bangor and also good for the county. That way, one, these bills actually get a lot more headway, but two, so that there's a lot more communication and collaboration around these bills, increasing their viability of being passed in the legislative season as well. So what I would like to see coming up forward is a new committee. It doesn't have to meet all the time, but it should meet in accordance to what is happening seasonally in the legislature to make sure that we as a council are still actively participating in the legislative process.
Can I ask for one point of clarification?
Sure.
So the 88% of GA costs, are you referring to the one-time reimbursements? Because to say that Portland gets more money for GA is inaccurate.
So
Every community gets the same GA money, and I just wanted to clarify that.
So look, I might be a little bit inaccurate in that figure that I just said. Maybe it's 80% of like a $100 million fund.
So they got 88% of the one-time funding allocated by the state legislature because it was proportional based on your claims of the prior
year.
So
the point still stands though, that we need to have a more organized legislative committee. If we don't do that, we're going to fall behind in terms of what Bangor needs from the state in general. So I think going forward, especially this legislative season, I understand it might be too fast to put something together forward, but I still want to have that conversation. I think it's still important to make sure that we collaborate with our representatives, our senators, and other people in Penobscot County to make sure that the needs of working class Mainers in central and northern Maine are actually being met.
Debbie, can you tell us where are we on our joint meeting with our legislative delegation and Brewer?
Yep, so I haven't heard back. I followed up last week. It looks like we are a go for the 19th, and my question was going to be, and I actually had an opportunity to meet with the interim Brewer city manager last week. And I had suggested that, in the past, we used to meet collectively, and if he'd be willing, and if his council would be interested. So I'm happy to extend that invitation to the Brewer interim city manager and to invite his council as well, because to Councilor Leonard's point, what we want is the legislative delegation from that side of the river, part of these conversations as well, because we want more legislative representatives advancing what's a priority for us here locally.
Other questions and comments? I think it will be interesting to see out of this sort of short list, if there are ones about which our delegation feels particularly strongly that we could help to be an additional voice or go provide written or in-person testimony on some of these things.
My question on the bills that carry over, do they carry them over because they couldn't reach consensus? They carry over because they didn't get to them? I mean, some where they didn't, seems
could
like
be
bills
any
that carry
number of
over might have
reasons.
a pretty legitimate chance of moving forward. I would think.
Some do and some don't.
Yeah.
And in talking to, the legislative analyst at MMA, I kind of asked that question and they said, some will come up for hearing, some won't, they'll just die. They'll carry over and die. So it's a mixed bag. You know, what I get a sense from the conversations that are happening here, that are happening in every community in every state, is I think there's gonna be, you know, a continued push for, you know, housing related, trying to eliminate barriers to expedite the creation of housing in the state. So I think housing is gonna be a pretty significant push. And I know the Joint Select Committee on Housing has been meeting, I think, all year long. And I think there is gonna finally be some push, to Councilor Leonard's point, I think there's gonna be some push to GA. I just don't know what that's gonna look like.
Okay.
I had met earlier, the Joint Select Committee on Housing had talked about GA in a meeting and invited some 4 municipalities. It was us, Presque Isle, Portland and South Portland, Presque Isle and I attended. And then they've done some local listening sessions where they've reached out to municipal leaders, and Bangor has participated in that. And I do see that there is a scheduled committee discussion on Thursday this week with the Committee on Health and Human Services. They're gonna do a child welfare update, and then they say general assistance, and I'm like, okay, well, I wonder what that's gonna be. So I think that the state is recognizing the role that general assistance is playing in keeping individual housed in our state. And, you know, I don't know that that's what general assistance was intended to be, but I think that's where it is now, and I think they need to reexamine what their goal is and how they're gonna accomplish that goal. But all of that will require money. And I'm not sure how much additional money they're gonna have on the table. And I guess what I would say to all of you is if there's any, I will have the department heads kind of do a summary for these particular items. And we'll have that prepared for next week. But if there are other items of interest or that you want more information on, some of the newer items are called legislative requests or LRs. There's virtually just a title or a concept. So some items we don't have every information for, but we'll continue to track that. Happy that our communications manager started today because legislative tracking is going his way.
Other questions, comments? All right, let's move on to the mail processing facility.
Oh, Carolyn.
Thank you. Along with what Councillor Leonard was suggesting, how would we move to actually take some kind of action or better explore that suggestion? I know with the real estate board, we do have legislative committee member that keeps us apprised and reports to us, and we share concerns, and we also have a lobbyist. So I don't know that we need a lobbyist, maybe we do, but at least I think we do need some kind of coordination to better educate us and to help us better coordinate, better understand, and better have a voice in Augusta. So where would we take Councillor Leonard's suggestion and move it to the next level?
I would say too, what Councillor Leonard was saying is we're coming up on January 3rd very quickly. So I think we can pull together some of the pieces, but to his point that, you know, it's a longer term effort, especially as we look at the next biennium. We do get regular weekly legislative updates from a Maine Municipal Association. And you receive those by email, so they'll give you sort of a recap of what's happened this week, what they anticipate coming up for the next week. I will also share that most department heads belong to a professional association. So for example, the city clerk belongs to the Maine City Clerks Association. The assessor belongs to the Maine Assessors Association. And all of those associations do have sort of a legislative point person who is ensuring that the members are informed of legislative items that are coming up or a call to action. We see a bill coming that we really think everybody should weigh in on. So we try very hard to kind of pull together those resources that we already have in conjunction with MMA, but a more, strategized and established approach is certainly something we can do. I'm just concerned that we're sitting here December 11th and the session starts on January 3rd as to how quickly. But I think I can easily make the invitation to Brewer to kind of help join us.
Thank you.
Counselor,
Yeah, to further Councilor Fish's point, yes, I know it's pretty early to affect what sorts of, there's obviously still time to coordinate, but from a joint municipal standpoint, it's going to be a bit more difficult. What we can do, though, is in addition to if we're going to go forward with a liaison program to other municipalities, which I highly encourage that we do, we can use that liaison program to coordinate with other municipal leaders to also coordinate on legislative goals that are akin to Bangor's own goals as well. So any sort of bills that are coming up here for this legislative session, we can identify what are the bills that are priorities for Bangor. And then we can talk with these other municipalities and the county commissioners to say, hey, these are the things that Bangor is interested in coordinating and passing and trying to deliver testimony in some way, shape, or form. Of these, which are ones that you like? And are there any on here that we didn't list that you like, that you might be able to sell us on in terms of joining some form of legislation or some sort of testimony on those bills? So while we can't necessarily start the initial ground of legislative committee to affect actual legislation, what we can do is affect the outcome of existing legislation right now, because this stuff is not going to be heard until potentially April.
Counselor Turnbull?
Well, I just want to put some information out there for the new people and other people I find interesting, but we have a lobbyist, right? But he just represents us on gaming issues.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, and then we're a member of Maine Municipal Association, and we get quite a few benefits. I mean, what insurances do we have for them?
Right, we get our commercial and
commercial
general liability
liability.
insurance.
Which is a big benefit, but they have a legislative policy committee, but just because there's an item, we might think, oh, this is great, MMA will support it and help us, or not necessarily. They have a legislative policy committee, which is made up of 2 people from every state senate district. So those 60 some odd people are the ones that decide what MMA is going to support legislatively. So they might be supporting some things that, well, like, that's crazy, why even bother with that? But that's how they decide what they're going to support. This, I think it's a 64-member legislative policy committee. So there's a lot of things that we might say, geez, would really like to see this, and maybe MMA would help us, but if it's not something that committees endorse, then I'm going to be testifying in favor.
It's also looking to see if they were gonna do. So I don't know if they will do the Hot Stove League, the Hot Stove events. Do they do that in the second session?
Yeah,
Do they do it in the second
Yeah.
session?
I'll probably start in January.
Yeah, so Bangor Region Chamber of Commerce puts on what they refer to as the Hot Stove Sessions. So it's on Saturdays and it is state and local legislative leaders that all come together and talk about sort of the issues and the topics of the day. So it's also another good forum to kind of build those relationships and advance those conversations.
Certainly, I agree with that.
Yeah.
It is important to make sure that we have an official committee, though.
All right, let's move on. Eastern Maine Mail Processing Facility Review.
Okay, so I don't know if folks had realized or not. I think there has been some press that the US Postal Service is undertaking a mail processing facility review. And part of that is they are looking at the operations at the Eastern Maine Mail Processing Facility, AKA the Hamden plant. This is part of their 10-year strategic delivery for America plan to modernize the aging postal network. There is currently, I did include in the packet, sort of the official notice from the US Postal Service with a survey link. Right now, what they're only doing is a survey. Senator Collins has submitted a letter in opposition to this because what they would potentially do is consolidate all mail processing operations in Scarborough, which would, she put some interesting geographic references in there for folks as to how far an envelope has to travel to go 10 miles. So just wanted to make sure folks were aware. Didn't know if you all wanted you can complete the survey. If it comes back that they do need to make changes, they would be required to go through a public hearing process. So they would have to come to the committee come to the community in person and conduct hearings. But I would say that if you have concerns, thoughts, or questions, I think the more information they get on a survey, the better. It's better to have 10 survey responses than 1.
Are there questions or comments? I will just say, I think it's really important for us to keep that facility in this area. And so I will definitely be filling out the survey. If there's opportunity to provide public comment and do a little rabble rousing in person, I'm happy to do some of that too. Okay, I think we're on to manager updates.
Okay, so I'm sorry to spring this on you, Council Chair Pelletier, but we got 2 letters.
Okay,
So, Maine State Housing reached out to us in regards to the 2 low-income housing tax credit applications that they received from Bangor. One for Penquist, one for Bangor Housing. They are saying it's an invitation to provide a comment. My assumption is the city would like to submit a comment in support of these projects. So, seeing universal nodding, I've reached out to both organizations and said, hey, if you draft us a letter, we'll be happy to get that because, but what I did hear too is they were concerned that they were just, the notices were just being released because they say typically this is the kicking off point and it's usually an 8 to 9 week period after that, that they go through the grading process. So more time to come.
that's our plan.
Are these new projects or
This is
are these the ones that we get an ARPA for?
So, yes.
Okay.
So this is the
So it's-
Sunset Avenue for Bangor Housing,
Yeah.
and it is the family project, family housing on Milford Street.
Okay.
Yep. On some other good news front here, you may recall at a couple of recent, Business and Economic Development Committee meetings, we brought together some requests to support some grant applications to the Maine Office of Tourism. We brought forward a request from the Bangor Region Chamber of Commerce to print the booklets and another one to support some programming in downtown through the Downtown Partnership. And we found out today that they were both approved. So,
We just did those the
Yeah.
last couple of weeks.
yeah, so both of those grant applications have won funding, which is great. And obviously we'll be circling back with kind of what the plan is for that.
Do we know the amounts?
I didn't have the amounts. I just saw the email from Betsy and Betsy Lundy and from Deb Newman that their grants have been awarded. And I said, that's great. So I thought that was good news. I just wanted to share. So last week at GovOps, we talked about the fire department sharing a plan to change our ambulance service licensure level from paramedic to EMT, which still allows us to our response to include a paramedic. I think it may not have been fully clear to our citizen employees at times. I know the fire department leadership has met with all of the employees to be sure that the intent is clear. So I just want to take a moment to reiterate that discussion publicly in case any concerns arise. During the meeting, the leadership was very clear that there is absolutely no intent to change our operational model. We will still have a paramedic response to all calls. The proposal is just to allow us some flexibility so that we could always provide basic level of care should the need arise. The interesting example that they provided to me was during COVID, for example, Maine EMS allowed every ambulance service provider to drop their licensure level to basic because it was important that they still were able to respond. So, and also to share that our collective bargaining agreement clearly states that all of our employees are to be paramedics. If you are hired after January 1st, 2007, I think. So, I just wanted to be clear. It's not intended to change our response, our level of service. It's just some flexibility should it be needed. The public should have faith that we continue to have a highly trained, professional and responsive service, and this licensure will not change that in any way. You're gonna see from me later, there is the upcoming point in time count. So this is often referred to as the PIT count. It is an annual count required by HUD of all people in communities who are experiencing homelessness. We have a number of employees who participate, but there's always room for additional volunteers. The count is conducted this year, the night of January 23rd at sundown. They have some follow-up dates planned for the 24th through the 26th. The PIT count is overseen by the Maine Continuum of Care with support from Maine Housing. And the hub coordinators for each area are organizing the efforts for their respective area. So you'll get an email later tonight with the information if you're interested in how you can sign up.
When they do that, I mean, I think
Mhm.
they've obviously been doing it for years, but it seems like sometimes our numbers seem low. You're talking about people experiencing homelessness. So how do they count people that on the 23rd at sundown, they're couch surfing someplace? How do
Well, and
they count it?
that's part of the problem.
Right.
Is, it is a point in time count, so they,
But that's a homeless person, but they're just,
Correct.
they're going to
Correct.
encampments and shelters and counting those people, but
correct,
they're not getting a count of those
Nope.
other people.
no, and that's
But have
always.
we got a way to kind of capture that so that get into that kind of?
Unfortunately, we don't.
Okay.
And unfortunately, that's always been part of the hidden, the hidden truth to homelessness is homelessness takes many forms. And people see homelessness in a particular way, depending on where they're standing or where they're sitting. But it doesn't count the individual who may be couch surfing. It doesn't count the individual who may be living in non-permanent housing of not their own, but they're staying with family or friends or whatever, which you may consider couch surfing as well. Doesn't include individuals who may be living in vehicles. Unless, we know where there's some vehicles, so, yep. And I think last year they ended up taking into consideration individuals who are incarcerated. Because an individual who may not have a permanent address is incarcerated on any given night, doesn't mean that they're not part of the homeless count. So that was a shift last year.
Counselor Fish?
Do they do this count several times during the year, or do they do it just once?
They do it just once, and they always do it in January, and I'm not quite sure. It's just an annual count, and it takes place across the country on this one day of the year.
Signed up to volunteer today.
Good. Kind of along those same lines, just so folks are aware, the warming centers, nighttime warming centers are open. Mansion Church is open 7 days a week, 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. The Bangor Area Homeless Shelter is open 6 p.m. to 5:30 a.m. The Brick Church is open 3:30 p.m. to 7 a.m. For daytime options, the Bangor Area Homeless Shelter is open year-round, 8 to 4 for daytime needs. And the Well up here on Center Street will be opening their daytime operation a week from today. And they will be open Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. We have heard from the Universalist Church. They have plans in place that for really severe weather, that they're prepared to open, and again, in partnership with Needle Point Sanctuary. So I think we have more information earlier this year, which I think is helpful. And the hub coordinator's done a lot of work with this and does regular warming center meetings, so that's been good. And then the new thing, as you may have seen, our police department recently released an app. It'll allow for anonymous tips, the uploading of various media, as well as provide just an additional mechanism to update the public, because we do a lot with Facebook, Twitter, press releases. It's just another mechanism to share the same information. But in this day and age, you know, most people are mobile, and having the ability for somebody to communicate with us in the moment is hopefully going to be very useful. And we have a lot of video that gets taken and uploaded. So this just provides, currently the only way to do an anonymous tip is to actually call the phone number. So this is just another mechanism to hopefully provide a mechanism by which people can report issues and concerns.
Counselor Fish?
Is that an old hand or a new hand?
I can't tell.
I think that's an old hand.
Oh, get your hand raised.
That's an old hand.
Good.
And that was the end of my items. I'm gonna notice that I believe Councilor Leonard said he has a conflict tonight. Right? You're not gonna be here tonight.
Yeah.
Okay. Councilor Hawes has not able to make it, so we have two counselors with items on the agenda that we'll need to reallocate, and we can certainly
Okay.
talk about that after.
Any questions or comments for the city manager?
Actually, I have one. How is the planning for the move going, and are people moving?
So people are starting to move this week.
Okay,
I think you heard Dave say that it's likely that the legal department will move this week. We are going to kind of, we have a small IT staff. So moving all of our IT needs at once is a bit of a lift. So like Thursday, late Thursday and into Friday, just a reminder, Friday, we will be closed to the public.
Yeah.
There'll be posts and updates going out, but our goal will be on Thursday and Friday to get, our front-facing counters, all of their personnel, all of their items moved, all of their technology moved, so that Monday morning, they're ready to serve, the public on Monday. And then different floors will go at different times. And we've talked about, you know, like Courtney and I have talked about, we'll split for a while so that there's somebody in each location, depending on what the issue may or may not be. So, by the end of 2 weeks, we will all be fully over there.
and every floor or just?
Every floor. So in case you haven't noticed, the entire school department is already gone. Okay, so the school department is actually in the space kind of where the clubhouse across from police department. That's where they moved to. Some of their individuals moved into schools. Our central services in our basement is at the wastewater treatment plant. Our engineering staff is just a little too giddy for my like.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they're gonna actually be in the building on the waterfront that we bought from Stan McMillan.
Nice. Nice.
So they're very excited. And to get engineers excited takes a lot.
Yeah.
And then everybody else in the building will be going to Pencliffe.
Okay.
Yep, so it's a big ship, but we're getting there.
My only other question related to the warming shelters
Mhm.
is, I believe when we allocated ARPA funds to heal, they said part of their operation
Yep.
will include warming. Do we know when that will be coming on?
So their board is voting this week on the grant
Okay,
agreement.
great.
So I think they're positioned to get going.
Nice. All right.
Yep.
Okay, seeing nothing else, we